It'll never be known how this has to be told, in the first person or in the second, using the third person plural or continually inventing modes. The typewriter continues by itself because I use the machine, and that's not just a manner of speaking. It is possible that one machine may know more about another machine than I, you, she. Here is the aperture, which must be counted also as a machine of another sort, a Contax 2. Turn the shutter winding knob 9 times until the exposure counter window shows the number 36. If the winding knob does not rotate during this operation, there is something wrong inside the camera, and the back must be removed. By pressing the button and turning it in a clockwise direction, it once more returns to the upper level. Let's put things a little bit in order. We'd be walking down the staircase as far as Sunday, November 7, just a month back. One goes down 5 floors and stands then in the Sunday in the sun. One would not have suspected of Paris in November. It's rare that there's wind in Paris, and even less seldom a wind like this that swirled around corners and rose up to whip at old wooden Venetian blinds, behind which astonished ladies commented variously on how unreliable the weather had been these last few years. Wind up the shutter by the knob and press the shutter release 3 or 4 times until the picture counter disc shows 1. 1 comes after 0. It was hardly 10 o'clock, and I figured that by 11 the light would be good, the best you can get in the fall. The Contax 2 is then ready for the first exposure. Focusing in the Contax 2 is done exclusively in the distance meter viewfinder combination, which guarantees sharp focus under all circumstances, since the distance meter is coupled to the lens. The viewfinder field shows the camera field when using the normal Contax lens of 5 centimeter focal length. For all other lenses, special finders are used that fit into the finder shoe on top of the camera. By looking through the eyepiece of the distance meter and viewfinder, a lighter rectangular portion of the field in the center of the picture will be seen. A double image of the object included in that portion of the field is easily detected. By turning the small wheel, one of these images will be seen to move. When the 2 images fuse into a single one, the lens is accurately focused at the distance of the object seen in that portion of the field. It should be noted that this adjustment must be made with the object on which focus is desired in the center of the field, and not at the left or right-hand edges. The small lever behind the focusing wheel releases the infinity catch on the mechanism. When the wheel is turned to focus, the catch is automatically pressed down and the focusing device is put into action. I let myself turn about and be caught and fixed by the sun, giving it my face and ears and hands, and I kept my gloves in my pocket. I had no desire to shoot pictures and lit a cigarette to be doing something. I think it was that moment when the match was about to touch the tobacco that I saw the young boy for the first time. What I'd thought was a couple seemed much more now a boy with his mother, although at the same time I realized that it was not a kid and his mother. It was a couple in the sense that we always allocate to couples when we see them leaning up against the parapets or embracing on the benches in the squares.
As I had nothing else to do, I had more than enough time to wonder why the boy was so nervous, like a young colt or a hare, sticking his hands into his pockets, taking them out immediately, one after the other, running his fingers through his hair, changing his stance. And especially, why was he afraid? Well, you could guess that from every gesture, a fear suffocated by his shyness, an impulse to step backwards. His body standing as if it were on the edge of flight, holding itself back in a final, pitiful decorum. All this was so clear, 10 feet away, and we were alone against the parapet at the tip of the island.
As for the boy, I remember the image before his actual body. That will clear itself up later, while now I am sure that I remember the woman's body much better than the image. The boy's fright didn't let me see her very well. Now, thinking back on it, I see her much better at that first second when I read her face. She was thin and willowy, 2 unfair words to describe what she was, and was wearing an almost black fur coat, almost long, almost handsome. All the morning's wind, now it was hardly a breeze and it wasn't cold, had blown through her hair, which pared away her white, bleak face, 2 unfair words, and put the world at her feet, and horribly alone in front of her dark eyes, Her eyes fell on things like two leaps into nothingness. Now, thinking back on it, I see her much better at that first second when I read her face and she turned around suddenly, swinging like a metal weathercock, and the eyes were there. The wind was blowing their words away, and they were speaking in a low murmur, but I vaguely understood what was occurring to the boy and figured it would be worth the trouble to stay and watch. And I think that I know how to watch. And that looking oozes with mendacity, because it's that which expels us furthest outside ourselves. Let's be fair, the boy was well enough dressed and was sporting yellow gloves, which I would have sworn belonged to his older brother. It was pleasant to see the fingers of the gloves sticking out of his jacket pocket. For a long time, I didn't see his face. Barely a profile, one would guess that he was dressed and fed by his parents, but without a nickel in his pocket. Having to debate with his buddies before making up his mind to buy a coffee, a cognac, a pack of cigarettes. He'd walk through the streets thinking of the girls in his class, about how good it would be to go to the movies and see the latest film, or to buy novels or neckties or bottles of liquor with green and white labels on them. At home, it would be a respectable home, lunch at noon and romantic landscapes on the walls, with a dark entryway and a mahogany umbrella stand inside the door. There'd be the slow rain of time for studying, for being Mama's hope, for looking like Dad, for writing to his aunt in Avignon. So there was a lot of walking the streets, the whole of the river for him, but without a nickel, and the mysterious city with its signs and doorways, its terrifying cats. A paper of fried potatoes for 30 francs, the pornographic magazine folded 4 ways, a solitude like the emptiness of his pockets. The eagerness for so much that was incomprehensible but illumined by a total love, by the availability analogous to the wind and the streets. This biography was of the boy and of any boy whatsoever.
But this particular one now, you could see he was insular. He was agitated, and one could guess without too much trouble what had just occurred a few minutes before, at most half an hour.
The boy had come onto the tip of the island, seen the woman, and thought her marvelous. The woman was waiting for that because she was there waiting for that.
Or maybe he arrived before her, and she saw him from one of the balconies or from a car and got out to meet him.
Starting the conversation with whatever, from the beginning she was sure that he was going to be afraid and want to run off.
He'd stay, stiff and sullen, pretending experience and the pleasure of the adventure.
From 10 feet away, anyone could have gauged the stages of the game, the derisive competitive fencing. Its major attraction was not that it was happening, but in foreseeing its denouement.
He would try to end it by pretending a date, an obligation, whatever, and would go stumbling off, disconcerted, wishing he were walking with some assurance.
But he was naked under the mocking glance which would follow him until he was out of sight.
Or he would stay there, fascinated, or simply incapable of taking the initiative.
And the woman would begin to touch his face gently, mess his hair, still talking to him voicelessly. And soon would take him by the hand to lead him off, unless he would even his stake in the adventure and rouse himself to put his arm around her waist and kiss her. Any of this could have happened, though it did not, making the settings almost without looking at the camera. Ready to take a picturesque shot of a corner of the island with an uncommon couple talking and looking at one another. Strange how the scene, almost nothing, 2 figures, mismatched in their youth, was taking on a disquieting aura. I thought it was I imposing it. I would have liked to know what he was thinking. A man in a gray hat sitting at the wheel of a car parked on the dock which led up to the footbridge. And whether he was reading the paper or asleep. I had just discovered him because people inside a parked car have a tendency to disappear. They get lost in that wretched, private cage stripped of the beauty that motion and danger give it. And nevertheless, the car had been there the whole time, forming or deforming that part of the aisle, a car. Like saying a lighted street lamp, a park bench, never like saying wind or sunlight. Those elements always new to the skin and the eyes, and also the boy and the woman, unique. Put there to change the island, to show it to me in another way. It may have been that the man with the newspaper also became aware of what was happening, and would, like me, feel that malicious sensation of waiting for everything to happen. Now the woman had swung around smoothly, putting the young man between herself and the wall, and I saw them almost in profile. He was taller, though not much taller, and yet she dominated him. It seemed like she was hovering over him, her laugh, a whip of feathers. I pretended to study a focus which did not include them, a sighting which would not include the black car, but yes, that tree necessary to break up too much gray space. I waited and watched closely, sure that I would finally catch the revealing expression, one that would sum it all up. Life that is rhythmed by movement, but which a stiff image destroys, taking time in cross-section, if we do not choose the essential imperceptible fraction of it. I saw their arrival at the house, a basement apartment, probably, which she would have filled with large cushions and cats. Closing my eyes, if I did in fact close my eyes, I set the scene. A bed that would have a lilac-colored comforter and everything would end up as usual, but maybe everything would go otherwise. The initiation of the adolescent would not happen.
She would not let it happen. A long prologue of awkwardnesses and exasperating caresses would be resolved in who knows what.
In a separate and solitary pleasure.
In a petulant denial mixed with the art of tiring and disconcerting so much poor innocence.
It might go like that. It might very well go like that. That woman was not looking for the boy as a lover, and at the same time she was dominating him towards some end impossible to understand if you do not imagine it as a cruel game. The desire to desire without satisfaction. To excite herself for someone else. Someone who in no way could be that kid.
You're making literature, indulging in fabricated unrealities. Nothing pleases you more than to imagine exceptions to the rule, individuals outside the species.
But that woman invited speculation, perhaps giving clues enough for the fantasy to hit the bullseye. Before she left, and now that she would fill my imaginings for several days, I decided not to lose a moment more. I got it all into the viewfinder with the tree, the railing, the 11 o'clock sun, and took the shot. They both had noticed and stood there looking at me, the boy surprised as though questioning, but she was irritated. Her face and body flat-footedly hostile, feeling robbed, ignominiously recorded on a small chemical image. I might be able to tell it in much greater detail, but it's not worth the trouble. The woman said,
"No one has the right to take a picture without permission. Hand over that film."
I restricted myself to formulating the opinion that not only was photography in public places not prohibited, it was looked upon with favor, both private and official.
And while that was getting said, I noticed on the sly how the boy was falling back, sort of actively backing up, though without moving. And all at once he turned and broke into a run, thinking that he was walking off and in fact in full flight, running past the side of the car.
As I was beginning to get tired, I heard the car door slam. The man in the gray hat was there, looking at us. It was only at that point that I realized he was playing a part in the comedy, and he began to walk toward us, carrying in his hand the paper he had been pretending to read. What I remember best is the grimace that twisted his mouth askew. It covered his face with wrinkles, changed somewhat both in location and shape. Because his lips trembled and the grimace went from one side of his mouth to the other as though it were on wheels, independent and involuntary. But the rest stayed fixed. A flour-powdered clown or bloodless man. Dull, dry skin, eyes deep-set, the nostrils black and prominently visible, blacker than the eyebrows or hair or the black necktie. Walking cautiously as though the pavement hurt his feet, and I saw patent leather shoes with such thin soles that he must have felt every roughness in the pavement. I don't know why I got down off the railing, nor very well why I decided to not give them the photo. To refuse that demand, in which I guessed at their fear and cowardice, the clown and the woman consulted one another in silence. We made a perfect and unbearable triangle, something I felt compelled to break with a crack of a whip. I laughed in their faces and began to walk off, a little more slowly, I imagine, than the boy. At the level of the first houses, beside the iron footbridge, I turned around to look at them. They were not moving, but the man had dropped his newspaper, the woman, her back to the parapet. She ran her hands over the stone with the classical and absurd gesture of someone pursued looking for a way out.
What happened after that happened here, almost just now, in a room on the 5th floor. Several days went by before he developed the photos he'd taken on Sunday. Then he found 2 or 3 proof shots he'd forgotten. The negative was so good that he made an enlargement. The enlargement was so good that he made one very much larger, almost the size of a poster.
He tacked up the enlargement on one wall of the room, and the first day he spent some time looking at it and remembering. That gloomy operation of comparing the memory with the gone reality. A frozen memory like any photo, where nothing is missing, not even and especially nothingness, the true solidifier of the scene. There was the woman, there was the boy, the tree rigid above their heads, the sky as sharp as the stone of the parapet. Clouds and stones melded into a single substance and inseparable, now one with sharp edges is going by. The first 2 days I accepted what I had done, from the photo itself to the enlargement on the wall. And didn't even question that every once in a while I would encounter once more the woman's face. It had never occurred to me that when we look at a photo from the front, the eyes reproduce exactly the position and the vision of the lens. It's these things that are taken for granted, and it never occurs to anyone to think about them. I looked at the photo 10 feet away, and then it occurred to me that I had hung it exactly at the point of view of the lens. It looked very good that way, no doubt. It was the best way to appreciate a photo. Though the angle from the diagonal doubtless has its pleasures and might even divulge different aspects, I raised my eyes and looked at the photo. Sometimes the woman would catch my eye.
Sometimes the boy. Sometimes the pavement where a dry leaf had fallen, admirably situated to heighten the lateral section. Then I rested a bit from my labors, and I enclosed myself again happily in that morning in which the photo was drenched.
I recalled, ironically, the angry picture of the woman demanding I give her the photograph.
The boy's pathetic and ridiculous flight. The entrance on the scene of the man with the white face.
Basically, I was satisfied with myself. My part had not been too brilliant. I did not see very well why I'd chosen to leave without a complete demonstration of the rights, privileges, and prerogatives of citizens.
The important thing, the really important thing, was having helped the kid to escape in time.
This, in case my theorizing was correct, which was not sufficiently proven.
But the running away itself seemed to show it so. Out of plain meddling, I had given him the opportunity finally to take advantage of his fright to do something useful.
Now he would be regretting it, feeling his honor impaired, his manhood diminished.
That was better than the attentions of a woman capable of looking as she had looked at him on that island.
You're something of a Puritan at times. You believe that one should not seduce someone from a position of strength. In my last analysis, taking that photo had been a good act.
Well, it wasn't because of the good act that I looked at it. At that moment, I didn't know the reason I had tacked the enlargement onto the wall.
Maybe all fatal acts happen that way, and that is the condition of their fulfillment.
I don't think the almost furtive trembling of the leaves on the tree alarmed me.
Habits are like immense herbariums. In the end, an enlargement of 32 by 28 looks like a movie screen, where, on the tip of the island, a woman is speaking with a boy, and a tree is shaking its dry leaves over their heads. I saw the woman's hand beginning to stir slowly, finger by finger. The kid had ducked his head like boxers do when they've done all they can and are waiting for the final blow to fall. He had turned up the collar of his overcoat and seemed more a prisoner than ever, the perfect victim helping promote the catastrophe.
Now the woman was talking into his ear, and her hand opened again to lay itself against his cheekbone. To caress and caress it, burning it, taking her time.
The kid was less startled than he was suspicious. Once or twice he poked his head over the woman's shoulder and she continued talking.
Saying something that made him look back, every few minutes. Toward that area where I knew the car was parked, and the man in the gray hat, carefully eliminated from the photo but present in the boy's eyes. In the words of the woman. In the woman's hands. In the vicarious presence of the woman. I saw the man come up, stop near them and look at them, his hands in his pockets and a stance somewhere between disgusted and demanding. The master who was about to whistle in his dog after a frolic in the square, I understood.
If that was to understand, what had to happen now? What had to have happened then? What would have to happen at that moment? Among these people, just where I had poked my nose in to upset an established order, interfering innocently in that which had not happened, but which was now going to happen, now was going to be fulfilled. And what I had imagined earlier was much less horrible than the reality. That woman was not there by herself.
She was not caressing or propositioning or encouraging for her own pleasure. To lead the angel away with his tousled hair and play the tease with his terror and his eager grace. The real boss was waiting there, smiling petulantly, already certain of the business. He was not the first to send a woman in the vanguard, to bring him the prisoners manacled with flowers.
The rest of it would be so simple. The car, some house or another, drinks, stimulating engravings, tardy tears, the awakening in hell. And there was nothing I could do this time. I could do absolutely nothing. My strength had been a photograph, that, there, where they were taking their revenge on me, demonstrating clearly what was going to happen. The photo had been taken, the time had run out, gone.
We were so far from one another. The abusive act had certainly already taken place, the tears already shed, and the rest conjecture and sorrow.
All at once, the order was inverted. They were alive, moving. They were deciding and had decided they were going to their future. And I on this side, prisoner of another time, in a room on the 5th floor, to not know who they were, that woman, that man, and that boy. To be only the lens of my camera, something fixed, rigid, incapable of intervention. It was horrible. They're mocking me, deciding it before my impotent eye, mocking me. For the boy again was looking at the flower-faced clown, and I had to accept the fact that he was going to say yes. That the proposition carried money with it or a gimmick, and I couldn't yell for him to run, or even open the road to him again with a new photo. A small and almost meek intervention which would ruin the framework of drool and perfume. Everything was going to resolve itself right there, at that moment, and there was like an immense silence which had nothing to do with physical silence. It was stretching it out, setting itself up. I think I screamed terribly, and at that exact second I realized that I was beginning to move toward them. 4 inches, a step, another step. The tree swung its branches rhythmically in the foreground. A place where the railing was tarnished emerged from the frame, and the woman's face turned toward me as though surprised. It was enlarging, and then I turned a bit. I mean that the camera turned a little, and without losing sight of the woman, I began to close in on the man.
He was looking at me with the black holes he had in place of eyes. Surprised and angered both he looked, wanting to nail me onto the air. And at that instant, I happened to see something like a large bird outside the focus that was flying in a single swoop in front of the picture. And I leaned up against the wall and was happy because the boy had just managed to escape, and I saw him running off.
In focus again, sprinting with his hair flying in the wind. For the second time he'd escaped them. For the second time I was helping him to escape. Out of breath, I stood in front of them. No need to step closer, the game was played out. Of the woman you could see just maybe a shoulder and a bit of the hair, brutally cut off by the frame of the picture. But the man was directly center, his mouth half open, you could see a shaking tongue. And he lifted his hands slowly, bringing them into the foreground, an instant still in perfect focus. And then all of him a lump that blotted out the island, the tree, and I shut my eyes. I didn't want to see anymore, and I covered my face and broke into tears like an idiot. Now there's a big white cloud, as on all these days, all this untenable time. What remains to be said is always a cloud, 2 clouds, or long hours of a sky perfectly clear. A very clean, clear rectangle tacked up with pins on the wall of my room. That was what I saw when I opened my eyes and dried them with my fingers. The clear sky. And then a cloud that drifted in from the left, passed gracefully and slowly across, and disappeared on the right. And then another, and for a change sometimes, everything gets gray. All one enormous cloud. And suddenly the splotches of rain cracking down. For a long spell you can see it raining over the picture. Like a spell of weeping reversed, and little by little, the frame becomes clear. Perhaps the sun comes out. And again the clouds begin to come, 2 at a time, 3 at a time, if one might say.
I will see the moon rose, or we hurt me at the back of my eyes, and especially, you, the woman, was the clouds that raced before my, your, his, our, yours, their faces.
I know that if I go, this Remington will sit turned to stone on top of the table with the air of being twice as quiet as mobile things when they are not moving.
Just as Remington engineers built the first practical typewriter in 1872, present-day Remington engineers have fittingly brought the magic of quiet to the homes and offices of typewriter owners through their perfection of the now famous Remington noiseless pressure printing principle. Here's how it works. Printing by speed, not force. A counterweight or balance connected with each type bar picks up momentum as the key is quickly depressed. It carries the type bar just far enough to touch the paper with sufficient pressure, not impact, to make the printed impression.
Pressure printing.
Because there is no impact, there is no noise. The action is faster and easier. The counterbalance does most of the work. Speedy, smooth, and vibrationless because it is precision built. Each part is weighted precisely. Many are ground and honed with microscopic accuracy. With this new Remington noiseless principle, you can type while others are sleeping, or even telephoning. Type on Pullman trains or in your hotel room in utmost personal comfort and without the fear of disturbing anyone.
One of us has to write if this is going to get told. Better that it be me who am dead. I'm less compromised than the rest. I who see only the clouds and can think without being distracted, write without being distracted, and remember without being distracted. I who am dead and I'm alive. I'm not trying to fool anybody. You'll see when we get to the moment, because I have to begin some way, and I've begun with this period. The last one back, the one at the beginning, which in the end is the best of the periods when you want to tell something. If they replace me, if so soon, I don't know what to say. If the clouds stop coming and something else starts. If the typewriter continues by itself, that would be perfection, because I use the machine. And that's not just a manner of speaking. After the if, what am I going to put if I'm going to close the sentence structure correctly? But if I begin to ask questions, I'll never tell anything. Maybe to tell would be like an answer.